very much welcome to this track 2, these quick presentations where we have different examples of how to activate student or active student participation. What we hope is just to get a conversation going, what you're doing and why you're doing it, what happens when you are involving students. And also, of course, just to learn a lot about the different examples and get inspired. I guess mostly get inspired. And just meeting other people. So each of the initiatives or examples will have 30 minutes. So there will be something like 10-15 minutes presentation, and then room for questions. And that will be the next group. And at 2:30, we will have a sort of mingle fika with an open discussion. There will be some extra coffee, and then you have an extra chance to just discuss if there was something special that stayed on your mind. Any questions before we start? So we are a bit late, so it will not be exactly 14:30, but more 14:40. So, thank you very much, and Anneli and Morag and Flavia, thank you very much for joining us.
So we will just make a quick introduction of ourselves. My name is Anneli Ekblom. I'm from the Department of Archaeology and Ancient History, and I'm coordinator and supervisor of the Master Program in Global Environmental History.
I'm Morag, and I'm in the Master's Program. I'm finishing up the second year of the program and hopefully graduating in June.
I'm Flavia, first year student in Environmental History.
Okay, so this slides I will show now is actually provoked by Cherie's lecture this morning. It's a quote from Doris Lessing, and it's quite radical, so it's something I think very suitable. The quotes were given to me by Michel Nutelit, who found them. Ideally, what should be said to every child repeatedly throughout his or her school life is something like this: you are in the process of being indoctrinated. We have not yet evolved a system of education that is not a system of indoctrination. We are sorry, but this is the best we can do. I think actually we are in the process of developing an educational system that is not indoctrination. And that is, to me, the importance of active student learning. Another quote: the student is put aside outside of society on a campus. Furthermore, he is excluded while being transmitted a knowledge which is traditional in nature, obsolete, academic, and not directly tied to the needs and problems of today. Young people from 18 to 25 are thus, as it were, neutralized by and for society, rendered safe, ineffective, socially and politically castrated. There is the first function of the university, to put the students out of circulation. So you can have many opinions about this quote. It's from Michel Foucault, but I think it's something that many students feel today, that they have to choose between academia or between changing the world. And I think that is very unfortunate, because you can do both. And science is actually a very powerful tool to yield if you want to change the world. You just have to learn how to yield it well. And now I will go on to talk about the Master Program in Global Environmental History. So this wording was actually written by Gunnar Sedlöv, who was very active in making this program happen. It's an interdisciplinary project. It's 2 universities involved, 7 departments, 3 science areas. So just that makes it quite unique, I think. In this program, the idea is that you shouldn't have to choose between science areas. You can have both. And through the program, you can actually get into courses that you would never be able to study if you didn't have a BA degree in it. So it's an entry point into many fields that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. The program is hosted in the Department of Archaeology, and there are mandatory and optional courses that people can take from all over different disciplines. So the 4 mandatory courses are given in history, 1 in SLU, 1 in art history, and then we have the course current debates, themes and debates in environmental history that we will talk about here specifically today. And we also have a mentors program, so Morag, you were a mentor for Flavia in one of the courses. because we've had faculty funding for something that is called a research node, which involves master's classes, we actually had extra funding to build a really nice scaffolding around the students that would perhaps not be possible within the normal educational program. And we have used this nicely, I think, by inviting very prestigious lecturers that we have been able to put in a regular course. And Morag will explain how that has worked in the course structure. So the students in this program come from a wide range of disciplines. We accept students as widely as possible because we want to create a truly interdisciplinary group. And that has great challenges, of course. But I think we have tried to make those challenges as benefits. Something that, so the group in total has such a huge competence already at the start of the program. And in the beginning of the program we have an interdisciplinary day, the language and methodologies of humanities and natural sciences. And this day has its purpose to make the students realize that the disciplines they come from are so different. But yet they read the same literature. This is a slide from what I say to the students in the beginning of the program. So your challenge as a student in this program is to maintain and cultivate your own disciplinarity or subject field, while at the same time being able to learn from the experience of your colleagues. And also by this expanding your own experience and knowledge. And this will be a process, and you should reflect on the process on the way. And something we also raise is the importance of communication in the group. So Creole English is the common language. We speak English all the time, even if you're not good at it, or you speak Swinglish, like me. Another rule is to listen to your colleagues. Never use the science weapon to shut someone up. Never call someone naive. If you run out of arguments or feel insecure, say so and ask to come back to the conversation later. Be proud of what you know and never be ashamed of what you don't know. So I also ask for the course we will describe, I also ask the students to define their own house rules, like you did, Flavia. I think you can talk about that later. So now we move to the actual course that we were supposed to talk about today. So the course is called Current Debates and Themes in Global Environmental History, and it's run by Department of Archaeology and CMOS jointly. And in the beginning of the program, I asked them to suggest their dream lecturer. Because of this faculty node money, we actually have been able to get them to Uppsala, which is quite unique. Also to suggest linked activities, forms of examination and so on. But I should point out that the process of creating the program and also this mandatory course has been a 2 or 2.5 year process. So I have written the objectives of the course, and I also did the course structure. So just to explain, so I'm not standing here pretending as if we did something else. Yeah, right.
Okay, so as Annalie was saying, this course is the most obvious attempt at student participation in the master's program at this point. So I'm here to illustrate a bit about what student participation looks like and to explain from a student's perspective how the course went. It's a full-year course. It had 2 events every month. You had to attend at least 10 of them to pass the course. And every student was responsible for hosting an event or a seminar that involved getting in touch with the guest lecturer, doing the readings quite a bit in advance to be able to design a seminar that you thought would be most advantageous for your classmates. Getting in touch with the guest lecturer to let them know what you were about to have them do at the seminar and see if they had any input, and kind of letting them know what the program is about in general so they weren't coming in totally blind. They usually were coming for a larger circuit of lectures in Sweden, so then they would go to a lecture for the Mind and Nature node in the afternoon. But our program was lucky enough to have him for 2 hours in the morning. So it was just our master's program that was invited to the seminar. So it usually was between 6 to 14 students that would attend. And as Annalie was saying, it was very student run. So at the beginning of the year, she kind of said, you pick a lecture and you'll take charge of that week. And in doing so, she removed like a central authority figure. So it allowed a very interesting atmosphere to develop during the seminar. And it was a good way to kind of push the student participation, because when you have a student that's also your colleague taking charge, you're quite sympathetic, and it's a very good way to kind of test out that kind of role for yourself, and it's a good atmosphere. It was very small usually, so. And then you had the seminar, the lecture, and then you had reflections that you wrote about the seminar every week, and then you responded to a reflection every week from one of your colleagues. So there was also a kind of internet forum where you could have discussions about the week's themes, and that went all year as well. And then there was the final examination at the end, which was a 6-page paper. So that's roughly the outline of the course that we did.
So this is an example of reflections on the reflections. Through this course, we also actually started to integrate similar structures in other more conventional courses. And I think, Flavia, you can talk more about the Baltic Sea Policy Day, which was actually done in Modern Natures.
Yes, that was part of one different course we had, like the other mandatory course we have, and it was one of the events organized by secondary students. So we went to Stockholm and we had like a big discussion with all our classmates, and there was someone from the main environmental, I don't know the Swedish word, the main environmental organization in Sweden, and I don't know the nature, and there was someone from the Swedish Democrats and then the other Swedish party.
It says here actually, Swedish Society for Nature Conservation.
Okay, yeah, we had like
Swedish Social Democratic Youth League.
Okay, yeah, so we had a discussion with them, and yeah, it was just organized by second year students. We had to do like a presentation of what came out of the event. So some of us wrote a letter about what we wanted, but it was like sorry, I didn't prepare anything for this. It was very last minute. We did this last year. Yeah, it was an open lecture to the Eric Key, so this is like the European Union coordinator and of the Baltic Sea strategy. So we wrote an open letter to what we thought that would have been like good ideas. There was a presentation on the Baltic Sea and yeah, can't remember.
You can check out the web page.
Yeah, there's a presentation that yeah, and then we had a meeting with Folke Riden, which made like some movies like on the Baltic Sea issues and eutrophication and some of the main issues that the government organization is dealing with.
So this is a picture from the day.
All right, I'm just going to comment quickly on what the final assignment was for the course, because it went for the whole year. You could go to whichever events you chose, so there wasn't really a uniform experience for each person. So the final assignment was trying to condense into 6 pages a thread that you saw throughout the year. And it turned out that most of my classmates and I found it to be quite a useful exercise in actually understanding the field that we are entering into in the environmental humanities. Because the year of getting to interact with all these different scholars from different disciplines kind of illustrated to us in a very real way the different directions you could go in environmental humanities and in global environmental history. So it made us a lot more comfortable with perhaps what we're doing in our own research, because we could see that it fit in, perhaps not with everyone, but with some, or that there were certain aspects that were shared among the different scholars. So the final assignment, while a little bit daunting initially, was actually quite illuminating in the end about what we were tried to do all year. So that was good.
So one of the aims of the program has been to very actively build and practicing higher skills, or for students, to allow students to build and practice higher academic skills. And obviously that is nothing that a teacher can teach. You have to learn it yourself by doing it. So this course was actually constructed with that in mind. And it's also building academic confidence, I think, which is very important. So by interacting with these, and I'm speaking like major names in the field, like you have the individual supervision or group supervision with Donald Vorster, which is he's like the founder of environmental history in the States. And he was sitting there with you and giving comments to your thesis. It was a good experience. And I think that those kind of things actually happens best through collegial interaction. So what I did in the course was actually remove myself from it completely. And in this year, I've actually removed myself one step further. Like the first year I was saying, oh, there's no one responsible for this, so please someone volunteer. But now I said, you have to manage that yourself, and you're doing it.
Yeah, I think this year it's more like we don't even have that many lecturers. We have like the lectures after the discussion seminar, but the seminar discussion is just between us. And it's working really well, but I think one of the reasons, because we have 10 people in the program, we know each other pretty well, and we kind of agreed on all the communication rules, so it's working pretty well. But yeah, it's all nice, and yeah, it's working.
And from the second year students, I got these comments in the end of the program that they wanted, in the end of the course, that they wanted more, to talk more about their own thesis project. So we had a final occasion when the second year students left the, the stick over to the first year students. And they actually, the second year students presented their thesis work or summary, and the first year students wrote reviews of the projects, and then also made an extended review, which were then given to the second year students. And we will also do something similar with the pre-oppositional thesis. So the second year students, the first year students are opponents, like in a trial run thesis work. And I don't know how you perceive that experience with like reviewing your colleague and getting reviews from your colleagues.
It was a really good experience. It was nice to have a fresh slate, because the first year or second year, I don't know what to call you guys, but they hadn't really been around us ranting about our topics, so they were perhaps a little less familiar than our colleagues who had heard us ranting about our topics. So it was nice to have someone, 8 or 10 people, give their feedback without any previous understandings of where you're coming from, having to justify it in a new way. And their feedback was really thorough and good, and it helped a lot. So, yeah.
So what it is also in that process is also about building tools to learn how to make a review and be opponent of the thesis. So what are the pros and cons of this kind of structure? I actually read the evaluations yesterday. 5 people evaluated of 20, which I think actually is is a bad sign, really. And one of the evaluations said they wanted more. They had wanted more direction. But this year I actually gave even less direction, so I'm not sure what that's about. If it's about expectations of how a course should be, or if it's, do you have reflections on that?
I suppose it goes back to a lot of what was talked about this morning, but Flavia and her group have like an open communication system about what to do. And we had a much larger group initially, and then half the class kind of went away for fieldwork or exchanges or personal reasons. So then we were left with a much smaller group, but the plan was still accommodating for about 18 people. So it was a bit rough sometimes because you would have to last minute take over for someone that maybe should have been there, but they were abroad, and they can't really facilitate the same way from like Peru. So I guess perhaps the communication at the beginning would have made it easier, but we didn't really know what to expect in that regard.
Yeah, because you put down house rules on attendance.
Yeah, at the very beginning we agreed on like everyone has to be in class unless you have a very good reason, and we had 10 people, so everyone like chose even more than one seminar discussion, and you just have to do it. But it's working. I mean, it's really working. I don't think anyone is not enjoying it. I don't think we feel we want any more direction, honestly. No, I think it's working very well. Like I mean, all the discussions are really like all the time they're different because we kind of like agree on different kind of discussions. Like last week we had a discussion about like the difference between humans and non-humans, and the people who were chairing the discussion took us to a farm, like the 4-H farm in Granby. So it's just like everyone can just comes out with different ideas. You can do presentation, you can just come out with questions. We usually read different things and then kind of talk about what we read. It's working really, really well. Like the course I enjoy more in the course size.
So now we open up the floor.
Right, so we have about 10 minutes for questions and discussions. I'm not sure if we're supposed to just do some sort of small group. I think we can just start with open questions.
Yeah, there was one.
I just had a comment. I think there's some research done on this with the more you give a responsibility to the students, so to speak, and how that relates to the feedback you receive.
Yeah.
So you could look into that maybe. It's quite interesting, and it's quite common that, for instance, evaluation scores go down, not up. So from the beginning. And then, so it's very common that they experience a dip, and then it might change. So I think it's very much connected to experiences from before and expectations. So there might be, if you're wondering, I mean, there might be some literature that would be interesting for you to look further into if you want to develop the concept.
And it would also be interesting just how the course is evaluated. Is it just how, if you use a normal sort of evaluation, you might not know the result of such a course right after the course has ended. It would be nice just if you could have your perception of this topic changed during these weeks, or if you could construct, have you tried different approaches?
I mean, the final reflection, which I examine and I grade as well, they are in a way evaluation. And I was actually really happy when I read them, because to me it worked exactly as I had imagined it. It was a meta-reflection, and the reflection on the topic of environmental history is with, and also on the learning process. Exactly as you said, Mona. In the beginning I was very afraid. I didn't know what the field was and what belonged, what didn't. But then you can follow a sense of maturity, like, okay, now I realize that basically it's very broad, so I'm right. You can do other types of evaluations. Yes?
I'm just interested in hearing that you tell us how is it as you as a teacher to let out of control, just to leave it to the students. How do you manage?
Well, it's difficult not to interfere. So that's why I decided not to be there in the discussions, because the first time I was, and I noticed that I kind of dominated the discussion, and it was very quiet. And I've taught at CEMUS for several years, and I have watched how CEMUS does, and I've seen that it really works. Student active engagement works really well. So I think I brought that experience with me. Also, I think it's important to what Cherie brought up this morning, that I am quite well incorporated in my department. I'm safe. So I think it's a very good point. Like, I might not have been able to build this course like that if I was a new teacher. It would have been impossible, I think. So that's a very important point.
Where did you find your sources of inspiration?
In CMS.
Pedagogically speaking. I mean,
Yeah, CMS.
things.
Yes. I think they do a brilliant job. And I think it's a problem because CMS is quite well known outside of Uppsala University, but not so well known inside Uppsala University, and that's very weird. Like, I continuously, in all situations, had to remind people about, but CMS is already doing this, so why not speak to them? Because there was a question.
Yeah, I was wondering how would this sort of discussions in an organization would look like in bigger groups? Because as I'm hearing these guys, it seems like the group was much smaller compared to normal group of classes. Like for our master's program, we are around 62 people. So I imagine, I'm just wondering how would it look or how would it work out if you have like such a big group?
I mean, you could divide people in groups and just have different kind of a workshop and just people, you know, like, I don't know, 10, I don't know, if you are 60 people, just 6 groups and 10 people, I think it would work. You kind of, you know, in a big group, I don't think it would work, I don't know. At least for us, I think that would be the option, just dividing people, I don't know.
But it feels like if you are like all together, you have like an open floor to hear everyone. So basically, you will have a chance to hear and interact with everyone.
I think the experience I had is that in a big group, not everyone says something. Like, it's very hard for some people maybe to speak in a big group. But if you're with 10 people, you kind of know each other, you just feel more comfortable to say whatever. I don't know. Even that's the reason, like, even if there's not a teacher, you feel more comfortable to say something.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing we experienced.
That's actually something I have noticed a lot. Like, what happens when the teacher is there, the people are suddenly afraid of saying the wrong thing. And that mutes them completely. Because they make the teacher, regardless of how I behave. Like, I'm not, when I teach, I try not to be authoritative at all. But I mean, however I behave, they put me in that role. And that destroys the interaction. And I think, like, I have tried so hard to break that, but it just, the best way to break it is not being there. I think that's my conclusion.
Maybe one question, a bit following up what you discussed earlier, when you were talking about the evaluation from the students and mentioning their expectations. How do you manage their expectations with yours in terms of your idea of the course and the discussions that are happening in the course, and how do you create the conditions in the class to make sure that, or what do you want to make sure of, you know, that you reach the learning outcomes and so on. So I don't know if it's a clear question, but it's focusing on how do you marry your expectations with those of the students while still having an idea that you are providing the space to learn about the course and so on, about the subject.
Well, obviously, I mean, I am the examiner, and I'm grading the final explanation, and everyone, I mean, so it would be ridiculous to pretend as if there are no such thing. It's not. How do we do that?
I would say that that's something that is kind of obvious, that there's a juncture between what happens during the year and then the outcomes and expectations. Perhaps that they're not cohesive yet.
Yeah.
And it's only been done once, this course, so of course there's going to be some things to iron out, but in general, you're evaluating it based on like a learning model, perhaps that doesn't really take in the whole year's experience.
No.
So you can't actually know the discussions, you don't really know who partook in them. You only have the online avenue to look at, which is great. But it's hard to kind of tell what happened during the year and what people learned and stuff from a 6-page paper, because you have to be very specific with what you put in, and you have to kind of write it in a way that we still are going to try and write it for what we think you want to hear. We can't really just write it about like whatever we want.
No,
there's
so
a bit of
that is a problem. I mean, you still have to confine within the traditional boundaries of the rules of what we, but that's also learning experience, I think, because relating back to learning academic confidence, and I have a lot of discussions with people, with students that want to write about something, and I say, well, you know, that's activism, but you want to convince more people than the people that are already convinced. So you have to have the tools, you have to build up an argument, and it's kind of like, to relate back to, you still have to write it according to what you think I want. Well, that's learning to play the game. Because you have to, a master student, I think, knows that it's not about writing the right thing, but it's about understanding the discipline in which the subject you are studying is within, and then also the expectations of the teacher. That's learning to play the game, I think. And that's part of the academic skill. Though I didn't phrase this in an academic way. But can I ask you that? Like, I think there was actually a sense of insecurity, like we don't know what is right or wrong, or like how do we do this?
for the course in general.
Yeah, and the program also, because it is interdisciplinary and can be.
Yeah, I guess that
Yeah.
existed. But,
So that's the con, I think, of that kind of structure.
All right, thank you so very much for participating.